Today we're joined by Jeremy Wooding, a British director, producer and writer whose work spans genres and formats, from feature films to beloved television series. Jeremy's career includes directing the cult British feature Bollywood Queen, a multicultural take on Romeo and Juliet starring James McAvoy, genre-bending films like Blood Moon and Burning Men, and television work on series such as Peep Show and The Restaurant. He's known for strong visual storytelling, genre versatility, and balancing craft with character-driven narrative, making him an exciting voice in contemporary British screen work. Today we talk directing craft, innovation, place-based storytelling, and the creative journeys that have led filmmakers from idea to screen. Please welcome Jeremy Wooding to Location Links Loud. Jeremy, welcome to Location Links Loud, our podcast and YouTube interview about you and your life. I'm really excited for you to join us. Thank you. To start, Jeremy, how would you describe the role of a director to someone who's not inside the industry and what that job actually involves day to day?
I suppose the director is the keeper of the creative flame and has to follow through the creative vision from pre-production through to post-production and edit. So in other words, you're across everything. So being a key creative can involve keeping everyone on track and making sure there is, I suppose, a vision for the whole film. Slightly different to being a director in television, where often the creative vision has already happened when you're brought on board as a director, and then it's about staying true to the writer and producer's vision.
And thinking back when you chose the path of a director, what was it that made directing feel like the work you wanted to do?
Well, I suppose I go way back. I have that the old story that people like J.J. Abrams have and Spielberg, etc., messing around with Super 8 when I was 11 and 12 years old and thinking, oh, this is quite magical. And what is this? Do they actually employ people to do this and film stuff and edit stuff? And so I thought, to be a director, then you need to do everything and kind of start early. And I don't know anyone who's in that area of industry. So what do I do? And I decided that to get there, I'd best sort of get involved with drama and acting. And I did that at university. I studied German and drama, and acted a lot in German, actually, at the Contact Theatre in Manchester, a lot of Brecht. And gradually realised that I wasn't as good as an actor as I thought I was. And I was getting, again, more and more interested in being behind the camera and shaping stuff, shaping material. I was interested in storytelling and characters and seeing actors do better than me in front of the camera.
And so what was the path that you took then to be a director? How did you get your kind of break?
Well, coming out of university, I still had my focus on learning what it would take to become a director or just to work in the film industry. And I was lucky enough to get a job as a cameraman and editor on corporate films in Northamptonshire, and I learnt craft of being an editor, producer, involved directing as well. I was just basically doing a corporate film school. But it wasn't where I wanted to go. It wasn't drama. It wasn't involving actors or particularly storytelling with script. And I kept on working towards that, but still not finding the people to work with or a way into the industry. So what happened was I decided I'd apply for film school. And so I applied to the National Film School and got rejected twice, and and then got into Middlesex University to do an MA in film and TV as a mature student, and really that changed things for me, because all of a sudden things began to make sense, and funnily enough, I started to get work. I started to get work making music videos, still doing the corporate films, and getting more experience as a director. So that was the turning point, really, doing the MA. And then when I came out of doing the MA, I realized that I needed to put together a show reel of short films to convince people that I was a director and they should employ me. So that's what I set out to do with my own money. And I made 3 35mm short films, which got me an agent. And getting an agent taps you into work in television, gets you to meet producers. I had a show reel together by then of not just the music videos, but mainly the 3 short dramas. And people wanted to meet me. So I began to meet producers through the agent, and a producer who saw the second of my 3 short films, a short. It was a British Asian Bollywood style musical set in the East End, sort of Romeo and Juliet story. They said, well, have you thought about turning this into a feature film? And I said, well, not really, but I can talk to my co-script writer and see if we can come up with something. And he said, you've got 2 weeks, because otherwise the money's gone. But, come back with a script. So we wrote the script in 2 weeks. And,
Wow.
And then 6 months later, we were on the top of Christmas Common near High Wycombe, filming a scene on 9/11, the day of the attack on the trade towers, and with James McAvoy as a very young actor who just starting out. He was 23 at the time. And we were filming a musical sequence, and it was supposed to be a very uplifting, romantic scene. And this whole cloud had descended on the cast and crew because of this Twin Towers attack. And so I told hair and makeup truck and everybody to switch off the radios. Don't talk about this, just focus on the work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at the news later on. And then we shot it.
So this was Bollywood Queen, your first feature, and it was a kind of bold fusion of genres and culture. And how did making that film shape your approach to story and collaboration early on?
I suppose writing it, myself and my co-script writer, we'd written it as a teenage drama romance. And at the time I was working for a jazz and world music magazine. And I sort of come across Indian filmy music, Bollywood, for want of another word. And just one day I woke up and said, well, that would be great to actually do a musical using Bollywood music. Because at the time I was beginning to look at Bollywood films, and they were just crazy. It was like you had such creative freedom, and you could do anything with, not just within the musical context, but you could have explosions and war and drama, and then you could throw in a song and dance sequence, and I just thought that was so out there. And so the idea of the potential then of that cinema drove me to think that I could make a similar thing work in the UK. And at the time, people didn't really know what Bollywood was. Having made the short film Saurian Trainers before, which was a kind of this is the kind of thing we're going to be making film, it was easier to get people's heads around what we were going to do. And then it was just a question of getting the money together and just getting on with it.
And it became quite a something of a cult favourite, Bollywood Queen. Did you feel right away that you found your creative voice with that, or did it take some time to grow confidence as a director?
I think I'd already found my creative voice with the short films, and so this was about Bollywood Queen was about one of the short films written large, because I didn't quite know what it felt like to do an hour and a half film and also to film for 23, 25 days, that sort of amount of time, because it takes a lot of stamina and it takes a lot of brain power, and there's no one to take that away from you. It's down to you. And I think that's the main thing that I was beginning to learn, is that running that marathon of a feature film is so different to doing a short film, because you've just got to keep going and you've got to be on the ball all the time. You can't either let your guard down or your focus down. And I think I learnt that on Bollywood Queen, and I think I carried that through to the other films as well. I kind of knew what it felt like.
And I expect you, as a director, is managing every element on a daily basis with every department's questions. How do you manage that on the day-to-day when you've got no longer got a weekend shoot, you've now got 4 or 5 weeks of filming?
Well, indeed. I mean, there's a lot of pre-production meetings with heads of department, and I love all that. I love talking to whether it's the production designer, the composer, the editor, the DOP, of course, first AD. It's a huge collaborative process making a feature film, and you have to know how all those elements fit together. But also you've got to enjoy that process. You can't go into it fearfully or think that it all might fall apart, because you have to have the confidence to pass on to your heads of department so that they have belief in you and faith in you. And that's going back again to what I was saying about, you're the keeper of the creative flame, but also you're the heart and soul of the production. They have to believe that they're in good hands. Otherwise, the whole thing begins to flop. Yeah.
And I suppose film isn't your only path. You have worked in TV, in comedy and in children's television. But particularly you worked on Peep Show in its early life, its very first series. And this is a very different series, shown in a point of view style and a distinctive comic rhythm that launched Olivia Colman and many others from within it. How did that experience challenge and expand, I suppose, the directing instincts, because it's a completely different way of thinking through the camera?
Yes, and it was a strange, slightly surprising production that just came up, and the reason, the path to getting that gig was that I was okay. Let's to backtrack a little bit. Just after making Bollywood Queen, I was doing meetings with TV directors, TV producers. I was doing meetings with TV producers, and what they had picked up on from my show reel and also from obviously other people in the industry was that I was beginning to get a reputation for doing quite visual and visually, I suppose, risky things. This mainly came on the back of having done 18 months on the series Derren Brown Mind Control, the magician who had suddenly burst on the scene on the back of that interest in David Blaine. And I'd sort of got the job to take Derren Brown's act out of the studio off stage and put it on the streets of London. Mm-hmm. And I'd met him down in Bristol, sort of knew the stuff that he was interested in, had this idea of mixing his interest in Victoriana and the Gothic with a very sort of modern, almost psychological, medical view of magic. And I wrote a little pitch for it and got the gig from Objective Productions. Andrew O'Connor was the producer. And so we shot the Derren Brown series. It was very successful. And Andrew then one day said to me, we've potentially got the chance to make a pilot of this comedy series called Peep Show. Well, it wasn't called Peep Show then, it was called POV TV.
Okay.
And I've got this pilot script written by two writers, Sam and Jesse, and who were with the same agent as me. That's how it sort of then came to me through my agent. And I loved it, and I said yes, I'm on board. And Andrew said to me, "Well, we have no idea how we're going to make this with point of view. It's up to you." And I went, "Okay, I'll have a good think about it." He said, "Well, we can make a pilot. We can make a 15-minute pilot," and we did. And the 15-minute pilot was all set in their flat and became very sort of constrained in its scope. And so they decided, writers, to expand it into the office workplace and get out on the streets more. And so we did another 15-minute pilot, and the two of those 15-minute pilots put together kind of formed the second episode of the first series. But yeah, so, and it had, you know, Olivia, Mitchell and Webb, and it mostly had the basis there of the series, yeah.
And you mentioned Jesse. So Jesse Armstrong,
Yep.
from who went on to write Succession. So he's done okay.
He's done all right, yeah.
So yeah, a real grounding for some amazing careers that launched in Peep Show.
And interestingly enough, with Olivia Colman, I hadn't heard of her before meeting her, but at the time she was in the West End on stage in Eugene O'Neill's Long Journey into Night with Charles Dance. And so I saw her in that, and for me, she was a serious drama actress. And then David and Robert said, "Well, no, we know her from Cambridge Footlights, and you know, we're old mates, and she's always been in our heads for this." And I said, "Okay, cool," you know. And we did 2 weeks of rehearsal, and it all gelled together really well, and you know, made us laugh. So we were up and running.
What did Peep Show teach you about performance then, with working with actors? Because it's a very different way of approaching screen acting.
It was, well, what it taught me was that with the POV technique, actors have to forget all what they've learned about working with camera. So they have to learn a whole different kind of way of working, looking straight down the barrel of the lens. And so we had to do boot camp with all the actors, most the experienced ones as well as the younger ones, and just nail down what it feels like for them working like that, not to look behind the beyond the camera and at the person who's feeding them the lines, and find the sweet spot in the lens which makes it look like you're looking at somebody, looking into their eyes. But pretty much people got it quite quickly, and but the younger actors definitely quicker than the older actors, and so the going back to what I learnt was is that there are always different ways of working with inexperienced and experienced actors, and you have to be able to explain that, and also again get that trust and the faith that it's going to work and that you've got their back. And I think that's the main thing, is getting actors on your side and them not questioning too much, just having faith. And that takes, a little bit of time beforehand, and also obviously on set.
And just chatting to you about it,
Yeah.
that makes me think of, when did you know it was working? Was it really only once you got to the edit?
I knew it was working when we were in Riverside Studios rehearsal rooms for 2 weeks, because we taped out the whole flat, in its perfect dimensions, and then we did the whole 6 episodes in the rehearsal room, and then at the end of having rehearsed that episode, we'd sit with the writers and the producers, and there'd be questions and mostly comments about how can we make it better, was it working for you, whatever. And then there's a little bit of rewriting, but actually not very much. The scripts were pretty much as they were delivered. But that was a really nice experience, 2 weeks doing that, working with the actors.
And that's sometimes a luxury, isn't it, having that amount of time of rehearsal?
Particularly in television, yeah, when it's just like, okay, read through and go. So and that was down again to Andrew O'Connor, the producer. He insisted that we do that so that he could see it and so the producers could see it. But also because it's so out there, this series, it's like, well, can we at least make sure it works before we start spending money?
Fair enough. No, I can
Yeah.
appreciate that. We actually worked together many, many moons ago, but we probably didn't. We're in different parts of the production, because you also work in unscripted as well, not just scripted content.
Yes.
And we worked on a show called The Restaurant. Gosh, it must be over 15 years ago. And I was production managing the restaurants. So this, just to explain the series, it was multiple restaurants around the southeast, all competing to run a restaurant, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
And you were directing on that as well. What was your experience
Yeah.
like with that? Because it kind of is so far away from the scripted work.
Yes.
And how different it is. How different is it as a director from a scripted piece to something like essentially a reality show?
Yes. Well, we had, I think it was 11 producer director teams at the 11 restaurants, or maybe it was 9. I was series director on it, so it was my job to oversee all those teams and to keep the visuals, the tone of the series even, and also make sure they weren't going off doing something crazy with the material. And in fact, that was necessary because half the producer directors wanted to make an observational documentary film, and half of them wanted to make a formatted, unscripted series. So it was about bringing that in together. And although they might have shot some wonderful stuff during that time of, behind the scenes in those restaurants, it just often just didn't fit in, because this series was produced by people who had produced The Apprentice. So they knew where they wanted to go with this. And it was, my job to make sure that their vision for it stayed on course. And so it was a great job. Mostly my job as a director on it was to select the music, to oversee the edit, to oversee the look of the thing, the grading, and all the rest of it, just to make sure it had its own voice going on.
And I suppose that's what it's the perspective and tone of a group of people that you're trying to please a lot of people as a director in that scenario.
Yeah, indeed. And also because with unscripted, often there is, unscripted, there is a roadmap for what you're planning to shoot and what you want to achieve. But things change along the way. It shapes itself as you go along, as you know. And So you needed to be flexible to think, okay, we need to change that because that's not working, or that seems really fake, so we need to do X, Y, and Z. And that was interesting with that show because I had the flexibility, and also weirdly enough, I had the money. So it was a time, I don't know if you remember, it was the time when the BBC had this whole idea of think big. And so they were, spending money big on shows that they wanted to impress with.
It was massive teams at that time. I was working in production in the BBC, and it was a time of way before Traitors. There was a project called The Murder Game as well.
Right.
So it was The Murder Game, the restaurant. These were massive teams. At that time, all the restaurant competitors, whatever who were competing to have were all living in a house, which seemed to be a thing at the time. Everybody needed to live in the house as well. So we were all based at the house. So I'd got the day-to-day of looking after 7 couples, or however many couples it was, living together in a mansion, going off to their restaurants in the day with all the camera kit, breaking in different places around the counties.
Yeah.
So I can remember, because I trained as a stage manager originally, I can remember marking up, because it was a massive country house, this indoor tennis court into sections like a stage manager's prop table.
Yeah.
And the teams, the producing teams would come in, drop off the things that were broken, pick up because it was still tape as well at the time, pick up their new tapes, drop off the tapes that they filmed off. It was a massive operation with a massive team, hundreds of people involved.
Yeah, the logistics were crazy.
Yeah, and yeah, at a time when the BBC was spending big money on big shows, and it's it was an interesting job.
It was quite a lot of moving parts to that as well, and also there was a studio set as well. We were doing these live studio sessions each week. I mean, it's twice a week, which was Raymond Blanc reporting back how the couples had done with their restaurants. And yes, it was quite stressful because I was directing all the studio stuff. And it was 8 camera shoot, and they were all hidden behind 2-way mirrors, and we came across the biggest problem being that no one could actually understand Raymond Blanc with his French accent. So the competitors would sort of look blankly, and we'd sort of have to go again, and the main producer would have to go in and say, okay, what we're talking about here is this, and then we'd start again. But we hadn't foreseen that because when he starts talking about food, Raymond gets very passionate and he gets very French. Whereas when you talk to him normally, he's quite, French accented English. So yeah, no, that was a thinking on your feet moment.
Back to your film work. Your film Blood Moon blends Western, horror, and genre elements. What drew you to that kind of hybrid storytelling, and how did you tackle building its unique world?
Well, firstly, that script came to me via one of the owners of Objective Productions, Michael Vine, who's also a manager. He manages Darren Brown, but also he managed a scriptwriter called Alan Whiteman. And I'd met Alan, and he said, look, I've got various scripts that I've written. Can I send you something to read? And I said, yeah, go on. As always do when people say, can I send you something? And one of the scripts was Blood Moon. And it was quite long, but I just loved the premise of it being a werewolf Western, and logistically very difficult to bring off on a budget. So I had to do a bit of thinking, what could I do with this to make it work? And firstly, cut down the script. It's a werewolf Western, so obviously the werewolf has to be in it, and think about where we're going to film it. And I knew about the spaghetti westerns being shot in Almeria area, south of Spain, and I thought, well, maybe we can film it there. So I went over there with Michael Vine, the producer, and I said, look, this could work. However, budgetary wise, we got to bring cast and crew over, and it just doesn't make sense. However, I have read about a reenactment society who have built a western town in Kent called Laredo, and it's only 20 minutes outside of Victoria, and maybe we can convince them that we could shoot our film there. So I went to the location, had a look around. They were really nice. They'd never had a movie shot there before, and there were 23 buildings that were perfectly set dressed inside and out, and it was there. It was like a studio backlot. So we offered them, a reasonable amount of money, and they said, okay, if we can be in it. And I said, yes, become extras, And they said, we've got all the gear. So it just got better.
I mean, you're just saving money left, right, and centre here. That's the costume paid for, locations paid for, and you're supporting artists.
Yeah.
Did you pay them?
The art direction. No, we didn't. Again, we did actually. Yes, we did. But I don't know if it was full rate, it was half day or something. But so that was a fortuitous events coming together, and thank God they said, yes, you can film here, because otherwise it just wouldn't have happened.
Too expensive.
Yeah.
And what was, I suppose, balancing genre spectacle with actually quite a lot of grounded character work in that film? What was that like?
Well, the character work was based on the idea of a film called Stagecoach, the John Wayne movie, where it was a stagecoach full of different characters who arrive at this staging house, this bar, restaurant, whatever it was, and how you then began to get the backstories of each of those characters as they interacted. And two of our characters in Blood Moon being villains who were basically holding these other characters hostage. So it was a Western trope of being, held hostage by the outlaws, but nevertheless a lot of character work in there by each of those passengers having their own story, how they got there, and gradually those stories came out during the film. So I knew that was a solid basis there. And then on top of it, or rather around it, was the creature out there who can kill you. And so it was almost like Assault on Precinct 13. It was, you're stuck in a boarded up place, fighting for your life, and along the way stuff comes out about you, the character, and your backstory.
And then Burning Men had a very different emotional texture. And what attracted you to that story, and how did you approach bringing that to the screen?
Well, Burning Men again came back to wanting to make a road movie. And me being obsessed with genre and just loving cinema, really. And genre for me is just cinema. I don't see it as a problem for finding your voice as a director to love genre. I mean, you can do horror, comedy, Western, whatever. Always your own sensibility will come through. And with Burning Men, it was going to make a road movie. It should be fairly modest budget because we're going to be on the road. We're not going to be doing huge builds on sets or paying for huge locations. And I wrote that with Neil, my co-script writer, back in 2006. And it hung around for years and years. But it was just basically a teenage road movie about 4 teenagers on the road and just their interaction. It didn't have a genre element other than being a road movie. And gradually, through doing Blood Moon, I was getting interested in different categories, I suppose, of horror films, and folk horror was particularly interesting because it was beginning to filter through on lots of low-budget horror films at the time. So with Neil, we rewrote the script into being a folk horror inflected road movie, and and then it got some more interest from investors, and they thought, okay, I get it. It's a horror road movie. That's going to get its money back, and so we were away with that, and yeah, it just stemmed from a walk across Hampstead Heath years and years ago, thinking about what is the next movie we want to write and make. And we both love road movies, and particularly Badlands and Jim Jarmusch's road movie, Stranger Than Paradise. I'd seen some great road movies that were made, just guerrilla style. So I thought, yeah, we can do this.
So across all these films, what's remained the constant for you as a director, even they're all so different?
Excitement of making cinema, and the challenge of trying to trying to make cinema which is not television, and that'll work both on a mobile phone and on the big screen. And at one point, I got obsessed with does it work on the phone, and can we go into the cinema and check if it works on the big screen? This is with Burning Men, and I thought, well, okay, if it does work on both, then it can work on any kind of in any kind of format. Kind of goes back to Bollywood Queen as well, because Bollywood Queen, we did a couple of screenings of Bollywood Queen projected onto a whitewashed wall in a village, just I can't remember where it was, Wiltshire somewhere, I think, at a film festival. And I'd read about Indian villages doing film projections of Bollywood movies on the side of buildings, and how they would just entrance kids and families alike. And so I thought, well, if it works on the side of a building, it'll work anywhere and on any format.
I love that. So how does location influence performance and kind of tone, narrative, momentum? I think obviously this is location links. We're going to get into talking about Lincolnshire as well, and your relationship with Lincolnshire, but location being centre and point in the filmmaking that you have done, what's the influence on the films?
Well, location is very important to me as a springboard into visualizing the film, because I don't like working in the studio. I don't like building sets. I think the authenticity you get from locations is great. You obviously lose a certain amount of control by not having a set. But I get inspired by locations, and this kind of started out with making the short films in London, it being a London trilogy. By then, by the time I was making those, I knew London like the back of my hand. I'd been a tour guide in London for a German tour company, going around London, doing my spiel on the microphone in German, and learning. I had to learn a lot about the history and also the obviously the sights of London. So I became a bit of a London obsessive, and I realized that there were lots of stories to tell, both historically and contemporary, and that each location, wherever it was in London, had stories to tell and kind of, I suppose, visual secrets to reveal. And that for me is the essence of locations, and also the essence of why I love Lincoln as well. I came to Lincoln 3 years ago, moved to Lincoln from London, but I knew Lincoln quite well beforehand because my partner was born here, and while living in London, we used to come and stay in Lincoln, visit her family, and used to stay at the White Hart Hotel uphill. And it was an escape from London, and I kind of fell in love with the city. And from that, I suppose my imagination got sparked, and I began to think, okay, what stories has Lincoln got that we could make here? And there are lots. So I'm still as excited now about Lincoln and stories set in Lincoln as I was.
Well, that's what I hope will happen in the coming years, is that the content that we're trying to increase in the county will find these stories that are unique to the county and to Lincoln as well. How do you see places like Lincolnshire playing into stories visually? What might a region like this bring to a film or television production that's not obvious at first glance?
um, I think at first glance you realise there's a lot of space, and I love the idea that you can move around fairly easily. I mean, the road connections are pretty good overall, and it's quite reasonably cheap to shoot here, because it's fairly undiscovered.
Mm-hmm.
And not just Lincoln as a city, but the county, people don't really know it. So therefore, if you discover it, and a lot of people do discover it suddenly and fall in love with it, you suddenly realize that there's all this diversity of landscape, of architecture, the seaside, the flat lands, the dikes, the medieval architecture, the big houses. I mean, there's so much there to draw on, and it's not just about saying, okay, we've got a script and we'd like to go and shoot it in a big house, and there's a couple of big houses in Lincolnshire. I think it's more about on the ground thinking, okay, we're writing a script, let's get in our heads the location that we're writing for.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that will produce more films and ideas for films in the future.
So you've worked across some children's programming as well. With that pacing, tone, crucial, and obviously you've got a very influential audience that you're serving. How do you balance the creative intent with kind of accessing a younger audience's enthusiasm?
I think it's similar with working with children. It's being in a state of play and having fun. And if you approach the program as having fun, then that will transfer onto the audience, which is kids. If you approach it too seriously, or if you don't get the fact that it's a very visual medium you're working with, or genre you're working with, kids TV, you have to become a kid yourself, and you have to play, and you have to have fun, and you have to find that state you used to be in as a kid, saying, oh yes, I'd enjoy that if I was 7 or 8, or just a very instinctive kind of vibe that you begin to nurture. Yes, Dick and Dom was a spoof medieval quest series, and Dick and Dom obviously known for their zaniness in studio television. This was on location, and they were creating characters, which was them, but also it was a couple of characters who were princes who were on this medieval quest. And it was a spoof of a kind of Lord of the Rings quest. And that involved, to a certain extent, having child actors in it,
Mm-hmm.
but mostly it was about Dick and Dom acting. And so that was, that again involved a lot of rehearsal, but also just finding finding the tone of their acting, because I didn't want them to be like they were in the studio, unscripted zaniness. It had to follow the script. It had to be moving through the adventure, and so it became very workmanlike to a certain extent. It was not messing around, getting down to the work and delivering what was quite a high page count per day. And so my job was to keep them disciplined.
Mm-hmm. And also, I suppose with the kids, you've only got a certain amount of hours with young people on camera. So did you put everything else to the end of the day with Dick and Dom, or how did you approach that?
No, the kids fitted in well into the schedule because they weren't the major part of the series, as opposed to another series that I directed called Danny's House, which was 4 or 5 kids, and they just needed to again feel that they were in good hands, but also needed to not be too tense about what they were doing. So you rehearse a little bit with them, just get them comfortable in what they were doing, and I think kind of just let them go and make sure the cameras were covering it, rather than expecting too much of them as actors. Just again, a playfulness, a spontaneity was needed.
How has working with kids influenced, or did it refresh your approach to working in scripted drama and film with adults? Or
I suppose working with kids gives you the joy of creation back to a certain extent, without having to be too serious with serious actors, because they don't understand that. They just want to have fun and obviously deliver the lines and do what you want them to do. But that sort of fun that you have when you're at drama school or when you're acting in amateur dramatics, you're just doing it because you enjoy it. And so working with kids sort of showed me the enjoyment again of acting and creating.
okay. Looking back on your career, what has directing taught you most about yourself, both personally and professionally?
Good question. I think I'm still finding that out. I think mostly it taught me persistence. Just keep on persisting, don't give up. Hope that there's another interesting project around the corner. There's another interesting collaborator to meet, and just to stay in it and keep doing stuff, whether it's big, small project or whatever. Just keep doing it and keep morale up. Really, I'm not a pessimistic person, so I naturally always think there is something else around the corner. But maintaining that through thick and thin on film production is, yes, it's kind of like going in the trenches. You have to steel yourself and have the stamina. And so I think I found the stamina over the years.
And what advice would you give to someone just starting out, like especially if they don't yet see a clear way into the industry?
I think if you want to work in film and television industry, then you really need to learn as much as you can about it. I think people don't quite realize how big it is and how many different jobs there are. And I think the more you know about it, the more you know about the roles that are available, the more likely it is that you'll find the corner of the industry that either suits you or that you're really interested in. And then I think it's about moving towards that. It might be the art department. It might be you're a musician and you like music and you like sound, and sound design is suddenly a possibility. and you move towards that. So learn as much as you can about those areas and move towards it by practicing that I suppose at an entry level, which would be student films, short films, iPhone movies, whatever. Just get involved.
And what excites you right now? What are the kind of stories and genres you feel driven towards to explore?
I'm interested in historical movies at the minute. I've got a World War II movie set in the Alps of Italy in 1945 that I'd really like to make. It's out for finance at the moment. It's not going very far, but we live in hope. I've got a couple of Lincoln-based movies which I'm in the process of writing, and yes, hopefully they'll progress faster than they are at the moment. So things do interest me. I suppose the history. I'm kind of interested a lot at the moment in romantic comedies, and a romantic comedy which I kind of haven't done yet, and I think a rom-com in Lincoln would work really well.
If resources were not a constraint,
Yes.
What kind of project would you want to make next?
My dream
Someone's giving
project.
us all the money and we can do whatever we want.
Well, it would be filming one of my favorite books, set in New York in the 1920s, written by an author called John Dos Passos, and it's called Manhattan Transfer. And it's about the growth of the modern city, particularly obviously New York, through the Jazz Age, through all the building that happened at that time with the skyscrapers. And it's 11 stories overlapping, building to quite an amazing canvas of the time and the people involved. However, recently I read that Francis Ford Coppola owns the rights to this to this book.
Shows you've got good taste, though.
Yes, yeah, but no, it's quite an amazing book. So if I had all the money and the clout, then I'd make that.
I went down a route with I think it was a book. It was a TV series to find that Spielberg had it, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, can't compete with that.
Well, that's the thing, you see. There are huge development departments if it's Spielberg Amblin or whatever, and they just throw money at getting intellectual property, don't they? And then you think, well, another book that I really like, by the way, is The Wasp Factory. And when I was doing my MA, I did a whole presentation about the Wasp Factory and how I would make it. And then it just sort of went off my radar. And recently I came back to it because I again found a company who had the rights to the Wasp Factory, and I had no idea why they haven't made this.
Yeah.
But there you go.
It's it gets sort of sitting on IP, but I suppose it's development, and if you've got the money to develop it, it will sit on the list. We'll get to it in a minute.
It is, but it's a good question because how do you not get dispirited by, finding a project or a book or whatever, and you think, oh, I really feel passionately about this. I really want to make this. You've got to sort of let that go a little bit and just go, okay, well, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, there'll be another one.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about platforms like Location Links and what we're doing here at Locations Now? Why does it matter for the region and for the creatives in Lincolnshire?
Well, one of the reasons, the main reason why we're here doing this interview in this former bakery, which is now an art gallery run by Phil Bowman, who's an artist. This is one of the first places I came to when I moved to Lincoln. and there was a private view going on, and they invited me in, and I met all these really interesting creative people, and I thought, well, Lincoln and Lincolnshire's actually full of all these creative people, and I wouldn't have known there were these people here unless I'd have just, chanced by the private view. But finding those people can be quite difficult, and I think something like location links gives focus to people involved, not just in film and TV, audio, visual stuff, but also a creative centre, so that people can say, okay, well, I'm an artist, but maybe I could, connect with film and TV business with my artwork, with, painting sets or whatever. So I think it's a great focus to be able to join up the dots of creativity in Lincolnshire.
And I think so. We've had a number of networking events. You were one of the very first people that I met when I was sort of trying to figure out what was going on and how I can connect with creatives in the county. And then it became this. It's become a movement now with the Creative Collective. You're an ambassador for Location Links as well. And it seems to be gaining momentum over the last 18 months. We've had 3 events, and every time more people come from all different parts of the industry, from supporting artists who want to do more acting, to sound recorders, to producers, and also industry professionals from outside the county coming in to hear about what we're talking about. By doing this podcast, we're reaching out to people outside of the county to consider coming and filming in Lincolnshire, consider hiring the creatives from Lincolnshire, or bringing your project to the county. Is there a place, let's think outside Lincoln, so in the county-wide, that you think would make a brilliant filming location? And what specifically comes to mind?
Ooh, well, the first thing, somewhere that I've always wanted to film is Burley House. And also Dorrington Hall is an amazing Elizabethan building. And they feel accessible here. They feel like it's not like filming in the Tower of London or somewhere. It's like you'd probably be able to do a deal and film there. And also they're kind of a little bit unknown. So that excites me. So the grand houses, and also I'd like to film out in the flatlands, the waterlands a lot more. Around the Wash interests me, and the nature reserves. If I had a story that dealt with that, then I'd like to be out in nature filming.
And what would you say to a production or a producer or a location manager that's considering coming and filming in the county, and why should they come here?
They should come here because it's not as far from London as you think. So it's very accessible, and it's accessible also for kit hire and lighting, etc. There are places that aren't as far away as you think. The infrastructure here is actually quite good, both in accommodation and also travel. So I think logistics-wise, it works. And if it works for your story, then that's the main thing. Yeah. And as an ambassador, I tell everyone in the industry, come to Lincolnshire and film. And they look at you a bit quizzically and go, how do you get there? And
well, where is it?
Often. Yeah, where is it? It's a little bit of re-education, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's and you could pretty much cover anything from urban to coastal to countryside. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have an insight into your career and your craft. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
This podcast was created by Keel Productions in partnership with the School of Creative Arts at the University of Lincoln and brought to you by our headline sponsor, Associated British Ports. In our next episode, we'll be joined by Ian Sharp, a dynamic independent producer and founder of Sharp House Productions.